Before Earth, the Tears of Creation. Part 1. When silence was the only God. Before time had a name, before stars were born, and darkness learned to breathe, there was only silence. Not the silence we hear after noise, but a silence that was alive, vast, endless, breathing through eternity. It was neither light nor dark, neither life nor death, just being. In that eternal stillness floated a single thought, faint, uncertain, yet powerful enough to change everything. That thought was I am. And so existence began. From the core of nothingness, that thought shaped itself into a consciousness, the first spirit. No eyes, no form, only awareness. It called itself Eos, the whisper before light. For ages uncounted, Eos drifted through the void. It saw nothing, yet felt the emptiness. And for the first time, something stirred inside it, loneliness. Eos tried to fill the emptiness with sound. It sang, but no voice returned. It wept, but no one saw each tear that fell from Eos's invisible form became a spark, faint glimmers in the void. Those sparks would one day become stars. But Eos didn't know that yet. To it, they were only memories of its own sorrow, scattered across the endless dark. One day, from one of those glowing tears, another spirit emerged, softer, warmer, radiant. Her name was Lumira, born from the first tear of longing. When she opened her eyes, the void shimmered faintly. Eos felt her presence instantly, like warmth touching cold for the first time. Eos, who are you, Lumira? I am what your sorrow created, Eos. Then you are my mistake. Lumira, smiling, or your purpose. And so began the first bond, not of matter, but of feeling. Eos, the whisper of existence. Lumira, the flame of compassion. Together, they danced in the emptiness, shaping the rhythm of creation. Their joy rippled through the void like waves. Each wave birthed new fragments, sound, light, color. The cosmos was learning to breathe. But as the light expanded, shadows followed, for even creation must have balance. From the echo of Eos's first doubt, a question whispered too softly. Another presence emerged. It was cold, heavy, and full of hunger. His name was Varn, the keeper of stillness. Where Eos sought to create, Varn sought to contain. Where Lumira glowed, Varn absorbed. He was the mirror of all beginnings, the silence that feared sound. Varn, you fill the void with chaos. You destroy the peace that was. Eos, peace is not the same as emptiness. Varn, to exist is to end. You have started a chain that will never stop. His words chilled the stars. Even Lumira's warmth dimmed. Eos hesitated. What if Varn was right? What if creation was only the beginning of destruction? That moment of hesitation birthed the first shadow, a ripple of imbalance that would grow for eons. Lumira, seeing Eos's doubt, touched his essence gently. Lumira, you cannot stop creation once love has begun. Even sorrow creates beauty. Her words became wind, the first movement of the cosmos. Her touch birthed dust, which swirled into shapes. Those shapes became worlds, spinning silently in the cradle of space. Among them was one world unlike any other, still forming, half dark and half light. It was fragile, waiting for breath. Eos looked upon it and whispered, "Let this be the heart of all things." That whisper became the first promise, the seed of what would one day be called Earth. But Varn watched. He saw the growing light and felt himself fatting. He could not vanish, for nothing truly dies in the void. It only changes. So he began to corrupt the echoes of creation. He planted fear inside the wind, doubt inside the light, and silence inside the hearts of stars. And slowly, the perfect harmony Eos and Lumira had built began to tremble. Worlds cracked. Stars collided. The first death was born, a sun that lost its fire. Eos fell silent once again. Lumira wept, and her tears became oceans on the young world's seas that remembered sorrow. A long time passed, ages beyond count. Creation had expanded far beyond its makers. Reach, Yos, and Lumira now drifted among the worlds they had shaped. But each world carried echoes of their pain. They realized that creation without purpose was hollow. Lumira, they shine, but they do not feel. Yos, perhaps feeling was meant only for us. Lumira, then let us give it away. From her soul, Lumira tore a fragment of light, her very essence, and gave it to the newborn earth. From that essence, warmth spread through the stone and air, creating life, tiny, trembling sparks that would one day learn to think, dream, and love. Eos watched silently, proud yet fearful, for every creation, he knew, must face its shadow. And deep beneath Earth's growing crust, Varn had already made his home, unseen, whispering doubt into the new life's fragile heart. When Lumira's essence entered the world, her own light dimmed. Yos tried to hold her, but she was fatting, scattering across the stars like dust in the dawn. Eos weeping, "You gave too much." Lumira smiling faintly, "Creation demands sacrifice. I gave love so that life may remember me." Her voice grew softer, blending with the wind of the forming earth. Her final breath became the sky, and her tears became rain. And so, the goddess of light vanished into her own creation, her heart beating in every drop of water, every spark of warmth, every act of love. Eos remained alone once more. His sorrow deepened, heavier than before. But this time, his tears did not create stars. They created time itself. For he wanted to measure the distance between when she was and when she would be again. Time became his way of waiting. And thus, the first age ended the age of stillness. The void that once knew only silence now held rhythm, sorrow, and love. The stars burned with memory. And on one small, blue world, life began to rise, carrying within it the whisper of two ancient souls. But far beneath its crust, in the shadows of forgotten fire, Varn stirred. He had seen Lumira's sacrifice, and he had learned something new. even gods could hurt. And he decided, if love could create, then pain could rule. When Lumira's light sank into the forming earth, the planet began to breathe. Its surface glowed faintly. Its oceans shimmered like liquid glass, and winds whispered through the darkness like voices learning to speak. Eos, the first spirit, drifted above it, all silent, watching. He could hear her everywhere, in every wave, in every heartbeat of thunder. But she was gone, dissolved into the veins of her creation. And in her absence, Eos began to change. He had known eternity as silence, then sound, then love. Now he knew something far deeper, grief. It was heavier than the void, sharper than creation's flame. He wandered through galaxies he himself had birthed, looking for her reflection everywhere. He found reminders, a star that pulsed in rhythm with her laughter, a planet that shimmered in her hue, a moon that curved like her smile. But no voice answered when he called her name. And so he returned to the world where she had given her light, Earth. It was still young then, still wild and half asleep. Mountains were being born, oceans fought with the sky. And from the soft mud, tiny sparks of life began to rise. They were fragile, small, trembling creatures of light and breath. They did not yet know pain or hunger or fear. They simply were, basking in the warmth Lumira had left behind. Eos watched them, fascinated. In their eyes, he saw traces of her, in their touch, her warmth, and in their joy, her echo. Eos softly, so you are her last dream. But in the depths of earth, another power stirred. The keeper of stillness, Varn, had not vanished. He had sunk into the molten shadows of the planet's heart, shaping a kingdom of silence. From his realm beneath the stone, he watched the living beings crawl and dance in the sunlight. He watched their innocence, and it enraged him. Varn, they move without knowing why. They live without fearing the end. They must learn what it means to stop. He reached up from the underworld, and his whispers began to crawl through the roots of the mountains, through the deep waters, through the breath of wind. He did not speak words, he planted feelings. Where there had been calm, he placed hunger. Where there had been joy, he placed desire. Where there had been love, he placed fear of loss. The living creatures began to change. Some grew teeth, some claws. Some learned to take what others had. The first conflict was born, and with it, the earth began to bleed. Eos sensed it, the tremor of balance breaking. He descended once more, his light flickering like the memory of dawn. He found a valley filled with soft mist and living creatures weeping over their fallen kind. The ground was red, the first blood, the first death. Eos knelt beside them, invisible yet present, and felt Lumira's sorrow in every drop. Her creation had begun to suffer. He wanted to destroy it, to end this cycle of pain. But then he heard something faint, fragile, yet unmistakable. A song. It came from the smallest of them, a creature wounded yet singing to the sky, as though asking for help. And in that song, Eos felt something new, hope. He realized that even in suffering, there was a spark that refused to die. Something inside life wanted to rise again. Eos whispering, "So this is what she meant. Love creates even in pain." He could not unmake Varn's influence, not without unmaking all life itself. So instead, he decided to guide it. Eos began to breathe upon the world again, where he touched the waters. New forms grew, larger, stronger, wiser. Where he touched the wind, thoughts began to stir, patterns, instincts, questions. And finally, he bent down and whispered into the dust, "Remember her." From that whisper, humankind began, not from the soil alone, but from memory, emotion, and loss. They rose fragile yet aware, small yet full of curiosity. They looked to the stars and felt longing. Though they did not know why, they looked at the sea and felt peace, though they did not know whose tears they mirrored. And when they loved, it was fierce, unreasoned, and pure, like Lumira's. Eos watched them grow, proud yet afraid. He saw both her beauty and Varn's darkness in them. They carried the spark of creation and destruction in equal measure, and thus began the age of breath, the age of mankind's awakening. Far beneath the surface, Varn watched as humans built fires and called them light. He watched as they sang to the stars, and in their songs he heard her name, Lumira, though they did not know who she was. It enraged him even more. "Varn, she is gone, yet they worship her still. They call her sky, mother, light, but they forget the silence that made her possible, me." In his rage, he rose from the underworld, shaping a form from shadow and flame. He took the shape of a man cloaked in darkness, his eyes like dying stars, and he walked among humans for the first time. They feared him, yet some listened, for his words were powerful. He did not lie, but he spoke the truth in ways that twisted hearts. "Varn, you love, yet you suffer. You hope, yet you die. Why worship the light that abandons you?" Some began to believe him. They built fires not for warmth, but for power. They hunted not for survival, but for dominion. They forgot the harmony Eos had tried to restore. Darkness entered not through storms or monsters, but through thought. Eos saw this and despaired. He could not destroy Varn, for the universe demanded balance, but he could create something to protect the fragile light in mankind's hearts. And so, from the last memory of Lumira's laughter, he created the Ethra, the spirits of dawn. They were not gods, but echoes, beings made of love, memory, and courage, invisible to human eyes. They whispered to those who dreamed of peace, who dared to be kind, who looked up at the stars and wept for beauty. Whenever someone forgave instead of fought, whenever someone sang despite sorrow, and Ethra's wings shimmered unseen beside them. They were Lumira's legacy, the light that refused to die. Varn, however, was cunning. He could not destroy the Ethra, but he could corrupt them. He whispered to them, too soft, patient, poison-tongued. You protect them, yet they forget you. You love them, yet they destroy what you built. Why serve creatures so cruel? And some Ithra, wounded by truth, fell, their light dimmed, their wings blackened, and they became the Verakai, the shadows of grief. They walked among humans too, whispering doubts, feeding despair, and the world grew colder. The stars themselves began to flicker. Yos felt his strength fading, his presence thinning with every battle of the heart below. He looked at Earth, at life struggling between love and fear, and realized something: creation would never be perfect. It was not meant to be, because perfection meant stillness, and stillness was Varn's domain. Yes, as long as they move, as long as they love and weep, she lives through them. And somewhere, deep within the clouds, in the shimmer of dawn's first light, Lumira's voice returned for a fleeting moment. Lumira, do not weep for me, beloved. I am every sunrise that breaks the dark. I am every heart that chooses kindness. Eos smiled through his tears. The light of the new day reflected in his eyes like her face, returning after ages. But the moment was brief, for even as dawn rose, shadows gathered again. From the hearts of men who had learned greed and fear, war began to stir, the first war of creation, not fought with weapons, but with choices. The Ithra and the Verakai would stand on opposite sides, unseen, eternal, whispering to the hearts of mortals who carried both gods within them. And so, the world turned. The story of creation became the story of conflict. And both Eos and Varn waited, each believing that humanity would someday choose their side completely. But the truth was far greater than either understood. For in the fragile hearts of humankind, Lumira's dream was still evolving. They were no longer just her memory. They were becoming creators themselves. The dawns grew red. The oceans, once calm and full of Lumira's grace, now mirrored fire instead of sky. And in the hearts of humankind, love began to battle fear. This was not a war of swords or fire, but of choice, a war so vast that even gods trembled to watch. It began with a whisper, as all wars do, the whisper of power. Among the early humans was a tribe that dwelled by the great sea, a people who still prayed to the sky and left flowers for Lumira's spirit. They sang her name in storms and believed every lightning bolt was her blessing. But one night, a man named Kale stood apart from them, watching the sky darken. He was strong, proud, and full of questions. His wife had fallen ill. His prayers had gone unanswered. And in his despair, he looked not upward, but inward into the darkness of his own soul. That's where Varn found him. Varn, you call to her, and she does not answer. You give, and the world takes. Do you not see, Kale? The gods abandoned you. Kale, then why do I still live? Varn, because of me. I am the silence that lets you think, the stillness that lets you decide. Kale hesitated. Varn's voice did not sound evil. It sounded honest. Varn, take control of what is yours. Why beg the sky when you can command the earth? And in that moment, Kale chose power over faith. He began teaching others to claim, not to pray, to rule, not to hope. And soon, his followers built the first temple of flame, dedicated not to light, but to strength. Eos watched from afar, heart heavy. He could not stop them. For choice was the very gift Lumira had woven into creation. To take it away would undo her legacy. So instead, he called upon the Ithra, the spirits of dawn, to awaken the hearts of those still kind. Among them was a woman named Sarai, Kale's own sister, the voice of the sky. Sarai had always been different, gentle yet strong, her laughter bright even in sorrow. When the world began to darken, she still sang the old songs to the sky. And sometimes, when she sang, the wind would answer. One night, as she sang upon the cliffs, she heard a voice faint, golden, and filled with warmth. Eos, child of breath, your voice remembers her. Sarai, who speaks, Yos, the one who loved her before you were dust. Sarai, then tell me, is the world dying? Yos, no, it is learning. But you must remind them what light means. From that night, Sarai began to speak to her people. She told them of Lumira's love, of Eos's sorrow, of the beauty born from loss. Her words lit fires in hearts that had grown cold. But her brother Kale saw her as a threat. Kale, you keep them weak, Sarai. The world bows only to power. Sarai, power without love is destruction, brother. Kale, then let it destroy, for only the strong deserve to live. And thus began the war of light and shadow, not fought between gods, but through the hands of their children, the first blood of faith. Eos wept as the war unfolded. For the first time, the skies themselves turned against the earth. Storms raged where prayers once rose. Mountains cracked under the fire of man's greed. And the oceans, Lumira's tears, boiled with fury. Kale's followers, empowered by Varn's whispers, learned to harness flame and stone. They built great citadels and forged weapons that glowed with the heat of the underworld. Their hearts, once human, burned with shadow. Sarai's people carried light, not from fire, but from compassion. They healed the wounded, shared food, and prayed for both the living and the lost. Their strength came from hope. The Ithra gathered around them, unseen but radiant. And wherever they stood, dawn seemed to linger a little longer. But Varn was patient. He had no army of soldiers. He had an army of doubts. He whispered to the weary, the grieving, the forgotten. Light cannot feed you. Love cannot protect you. What use is faith when death comes for all? And little by little, his shadows grew stronger. The fall of the dawn. The war lasted generations. The descendants of Kale and Sarai no longer remembered why it began. They fought for power, for land, for the memory of gods they no longer knew. Eos and Lumira's legacy faded into legend. Their names twisted, their meanings lost. and the stars, weary of watching, dimmed. One by one, the Ithra began to fall, their wings burned by the despair of humankind. They turned into starlight and vanished into the void, returning to the tears from which they were born. Eos watched helplessly. Every fall of an Ithra was a memory of Lumira fatting. He went to the edge of the cosmos and called out to her once more. Eos, they have forgotten you. The light you gave them is dying. Lumira, a faint echo. Then remind them not through words, but through heart. Her voice faded again, but it was enough. Eos returned to earth, unseen yet present. He found a dying child in the ruins of battle, a boy clutching his mother's hand beneath a sky torn by fire. The boy was whispering to himself, as if praying. But he was not praying for life. He was praying for peace. Eos touched his heart, and a spark ignited, gentle, eternal, pure from that spark. A new race of Ithra was born, not spirits, but souls. They would be reborn as humans, again and again, carrying light inside them, invisible but indestructible. They would not remember the gods, but they would feel their essence in kindness, art, love, and courage. Thus began the cycle of souls, humanity's secret link to its divine origin. Varn last gambit, but Varn was not done. He could not destroy what Eos had created, so he chose to corrupt the idea of it. He whispered a new thought into humankind. If the gods made you in their image, then you can be gods yourselves. It was truth twisted into poison. For the power of creation, without the wisdom of love, became the seed of arrogance. Humans began to shape the world not with reverence, but with conquest. They built kingdoms, empires, and machines that reached for the stars. They called themselves masters of earth. And once again, the balance trembled. Eos watched, silent, as humankind stood between divinity and ruin. He could no longer intervene. His strength had waned through ages of grief. All he could do was hope that within their chaos, Lumira's dream still lived. The hidden dawn, amid the wars and storms, Sarai's bloodline endured, though her name was forgotten. Her song remained. It lived in lullabies sung to children, in the gentle voice that calmed fear, in every human act of forgiveness. And one day, in a world far more advanced, yet no less broken, a child was born under a red sunrise. She had eyes that shimmered like the first dawn. When she laughed, flowers bloomed out of season. When she cried, rain followed her. Her name was Arya, though in another age she might have been called Lumira reborn. Eos felt her presence instantly. A warmth long lost returned to the skies. Even the stars blinked brighter that night. But deep in the underworld, Varn opened his eyes once more, for every new light summoned its shadow. Varn, if she rises again, I shall meet her not as darkness, but as truth. For even gods cannot escape what they create. And thus, the wheel turned once more. The gods who had begun as silence and sorrow would soon face the consequence of their love, a humanity on the edge of both divinity and extinction. The war was not over, it had only evolved. The world had changed, cities of glass touched the clouds, and the hum of machines drowned the whisper of oceans. Humankind had conquered almost everything except its own heart. They had learned to split atoms, bend light, and touch the stars. But they had forgotten why they had ever looked up at them. And yet, in the quiet corner of a forgotten coast, beneath a crimson sunrise, a child was born whose cry silenced even the waves. Her name was Arya, the child of two worlds. From her first breath, she was different. When she laughed, the air shimmered. When she cried, the sky wept with her. The people of her village called her blessed. Scientists called her an anomaly. But neither knew the truth, that within her heartbeat lived the last spark of Lumira. And the silent gaze of Eos watched her from the stars. As Arya grew, she often dreamt of a woman made of light and a man of shadow standing beside an ocean of fire. They never spoke, but their sorrow wrapped around her like wind before rain. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears she could not explain. The forgotten song. At 17, Arya found herself wandering the cliffs by the sea, the same cliffs where Sarai had once sung ages ago. There, the wind carried fragments of an ancient melody, soft, haunting, familiar. She began to hum it without knowing the words. The air trembled. The waves grew still, and then she heard a voice. Voice, you remember the song, Arya. Who's there? Voice. The first sound before life began, the silence that loved light. The sky above her rippled, and for the briefest moment, she saw a figure, a presence made of gold and sorrow, Eos. Eos, you carry her within you, the part of Lumira that chose to return. Arya. Lumira, the name from my dreams. Eos. Yes. Through you, her story continues. The vision faded, but her life would never be the same. The awakening. Arya began to feel the world differently. She could sense anger before it erupted, hear joy before it was spoken. And when she touched dying flowers, they bloomed again. But with every miracle came exhaustion. Each act of healing drained her warmth, as if the light inside her was burning faster than it should. People came from cities far and wide to see her. Some called her savior, others called her fraud. And beneath the noise, an older whisper stirred Varn, watching from the hollow between realities. Varn, so the light returns in flesh. Let her try to heal what humanity has broken. In doing so, she will burn herself, and the world will see that love cannot save them. He began to rise again, not as flame this time, but as truth twisted into despair. The temptation. As Arya's fame grew, so did the burden of her gift. Governments wanted her power. Scientists wanted her blood. Followers built temples in her name. Everywhere she went, people begged to be cured, to be blessed, to be forgiven. Their cries drowned her peace. One night, She stood alone in a temple built for her, its walls carved with her face. The candles flickered as a shadow approached. Varn, they worship you now, child of light. Does it feel holy or hollow? Arya. Who are you? Varn. The silence your god forgot, the truth your mother refused to see. He circled her like smoke. Varn, you heal them, but they return to their wars. You give them hope, and they turn it into greed. Do you not see? Love changes nothing. Arya trembled. For the first time, she doubted, and doubt, as old as creation itself, welcomed him in. Arya, if love fails, what remains? Varn, control. End their pain by ending choice, silence their chaos. Become the god they want. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, the light within her flickered dark. Eos returns. From the edge of the stars, Eos felt her falter. He had watched countless ages pass, but never had he feared so much. For Arya was not just Lumira's echo, she was the final chance for balance. He descended through light, appearing before her in a blaze that split shadow from air. Eos, Arya, do not let him speak through your pain. Arya, tears falling. You gave me a world that refuses to heal. How can love survive in such darkness? Eos, because love is not meant to end darkness. It is meant to endure through it. His voice was thunder, and tenderness entwined. For the first time, Arya saw not a god, but a being as fragile as herself, a father mourning eternity. Eos, I could not save Lumira from fatting, but through you, I can save her dream. Arya, then help me, tell me how. Eos, you must remember what she gave up, the will to create through sacrifice. The choice. Varn appeared again, the air freezing at his arrival. He faced Eos like night faces dawn. Varn, you speak of sacrifice, yet you never paid it. You hid while she dissolved into her creation. Eos, and you turned that creation into fear. Varn, fear was already in her tears. I only revealed it. The world trembled. Storms tore across the horizon. Every human heart shivered with the echo of their argument. Eos raised his hand, and the stars flared. Varn stretched his shadow, and day turned to eclipse. And between them stood Arya, her body half light, half dark, both forces pulling her apart. Eos, choose the light, and the world will remember love. Varn, choose the dark, and it will finally know peace. Arya fell to her knees, screaming as the sky cracked above her voice, carried across the oceans. And every living creature lifted its head to listen. The heart of the world. Within her pain, Arya saw visions, the birth of stars, the fall of angels, the laughter of Lumira, the tears of Eos, the endless waiting, and she understood. Arya whispering, neither of you were ever wrong, but both of you forgot what it means to be human. She stood, her eyes glowing with dawn and dusk together. Arya, light creates, darkness preserves. One without the other is death. She spread her arms wide. The ground beneath her split into fire and water. The heavens opened, and Lumira's voice poured down like rain. Lumira from the wind. My child, my echo, you have seen the truth. Arya's body began to dissolve into light, but not like Lumira's fatting. This was transformation. Her essence spread through every living thing, a harmony of both Eos and Varn, a union of creation and stillness. And for the first time, since time began, light and shadow bowed to each other. The new dawn. When the storm ended, the world was silent. The temples had crumbled. The machines had gone still. And yet, everywhere, life began to bloom again. Children laughed without reason. Old enemies embraced in tears. The wind hummed a song that no one remembered learning. Arya was gone, yet she was everywhere, in the warmth of sunlight, in the cool comfort of shade, in every heartbeat that dared to love again. Eos looked upon the earth and wept not from sorrow, but from understanding. Eos, so this is what she meant. Creation was never meant to be perfect, only alive. He turned to Varn, who stood quiet, no longer cruel, only contemplative. Varn, she has made us both obsolete. Yos, no, she has made us human. Varn looked at his reflection in the still water for the first time. It was not void, but shadow softened by light. He smiled faintly, a gesture unseen for eons. Varn then let the silence sing and let the light rest, and he vanished into the depths, not as an enemy, but as the peace that follows every sunrise. Epilogue, the tears of creation. 1,000 years passed. Humankind rebuilt, not with greed, but with wonder. They no longer sought gods in the heavens, for they had found them within themselves. Every act of kindness, every forgiveness after pain, every sunrise after storm, was Arya reborn. The myth of Lumira, Eos, and Varn became a story told to children before bed. They called it the tears of creation. And though most believed it a tale, those who listened with their hearts felt something stir, a warmth, a whisper, a memory of stars weeping with love. Before there was earth, there was silence, and from that silence came sorrow, love, and light. Together, they became life. And as long as even one heart dares to love, the universe continues to create. Every ending is a seed, and even silence grows. 1,000 years later, the earth had healed, forests had returned where cities once stood. The sky, long choked by smoke, now shimmered with uncountable stars. Humankind had learned to listen again, to rivers, to winds, to each other. But with peace came questions. Who were they before the beginning? And who would they become after the end? The myth of Arya was no longer a tale whispered by mothers at night. It was a belief, a science, a code of existence. The people called themselves children of the light and shadow. They built great sanctuaries of crystal that resonated with songs, songs said to awaken memories buried deep in the soul. And among these people, one woman began to dream. Her name was Illyra, to the dream of the starless sea. Illyra dreamt of a sea without stars, no reflection, no horizon, only darkness and the faint echo of a lullaby. Each night, the song grew clearer, and each morning, she awoke with tears she couldn't explain. On the seventh night, the sea in her dream whispered, "Voice of Lumira, child of my child, the cycle turns again." The silence stirs. Alira awoke gasping, her room bathed in pale light. In her palm, a single drop of liquid shimmered, not water, not light, something in between. The tear of creation. 3. The council of memory. The leaders of the sanctuaries gathered. They studied the tear and spoke in cautious tones. Elder 1, it is the sign we awaited. The gods will return. Elder 2, no, return means renewal, and renewal means destruction first. Elder 3, the myth spoke of silence reborn. Perhaps it is coming. But Alira felt differently. She didn't feel fear, she felt calling. That night, she stood at the highest tower, tear glowing in her hand, and looked at the stars. Alira, if I am to meet the silence, let it be where it first began. And so she left, guided by the same melody that once led Lumira to Eos. A song of light, longing for understanding. 4. The journey beyond Earth. Alira built a small vessel of living light, powered not by fuel, but by emotion, the harmonics of her heart. She rose beyond the blue sky, through the silver clouds, and into the black ocean of the cosmos. Stars whispered as she passed. Each one told her a fragment of the old story, how love became creation, how creation became sorrow, and how silence waited patiently at the edge of all sound. After many days, or perhaps centuries, for time had no meaning there, she arrived at a realm without light, without matter, only stillness. 5. The presence. It was not darkness, it was the absence of being. And yet, within it, Alira felt seen. Voice, you seek the source of creation. Alira, I seek the truth of why it began. Voice, then you seek me. The space around her rippled, and from nothing, a shape formed, not God, not demon, but a shimmer of both. The silence. Silence. I am the pause before the first breath. I did not create light. I allowed it, Alira. Then you are the beginning, silence, and the end. I am the space in which love learns to echo. Alira felt tears rise, tears that shimmered like the tear of creation. Alira, why do we suffer to love? Silence. Because without loss, love would never seek, and without seeking, there would be no creation. She understood. The universe was not built from perfection, but from the yearning toward it. 6. The reunion. The silence began to shift. From within it emerged faint glows, two familiar shapes. Eos and Lumira. They looked upon Alira as one might look at a grandchild of a dream long past. Their forms were made of memory, beautiful and unfinished. Eos, you carry her light, Lumira, and his silence, Alira. Then I am both, Lumira. You are what we became. Alira stepped forward. Alira, if I am both, then let there be no separation. let silence and light breathe together again. She held up the tear. It pulsed once, then shattered, releasing a sound so soft it felt like a heartbeat being born. The realm around her ignited. Stars flared into existence. Worlds took form. New universes bloomed like petals of divine thought. It was not destruction. It was renewal, the next act of creation, written in the harmony of opposites. 7. The final lesson. As light and silence merged, Eos spoke softly. Eos, tell them, we were never gods, we were dreams of their own hearts. Lumira. And when they dream again, we return. Their forms faded into the brilliance, until only Alira remained, her body dissolving into the new dawn of stars. She was not dying, she was becoming the song. When light loves silence, creation begins anew. 8. A million years later, a new world revolved around a young sun. It was blue, gentle, alive. The beings that walked its surface were not human, but they carried something familiar, a warmth in their hearts, a sadness in their art, a kindness in their touch. And sometimes, when they gazed at their night sky, they felt an ancient pull, a whisper of Arya's song, a flicker of Lumira's light, and the calm of Eos's gaze. They did not know the names, but they felt them. 9. The eternal cycle. The universe continued to expand, but not endlessly. For every expansion, there must be return, every creation, a rest, every sound, a silence. In that rhythm, all things lived, every soul that ever loved, every tear ever shed, every laugh ever shared, was a note in the great music of the cosmos. And at the heart of it all, a whisper could still be heard. Before earth, there was silence, and in silence, love dreamed of itself. Epilogue, the voice of Arya. Across all time and space, a faint, familiar voice sings. If you ever doubt your light, look for your shadow. If you ever lose your way, listen for the silence. For every heartbeat is creation remembering itself. The music fades, the stars blink softly, and the screen goes dark. Sparkles the end before earth. The tears of creation. Sparkles a myth of love, loss, and the eternal harmony of light and shadow.